The first time they saw her, she was already dying. Pinned beneath twisted carbon steel wreckage, half of her environmental suit torn open to the freezing vacuum, blood feathering in the microgravity like petals on fire. A ruptured oxygen hose flailed behind her, its hiss lost in the silence of space. One eye swollen shut, the other burning, not with pain, but with calculation. She looked up at them through the jagged remnants of her visor and smiled. The observers, a trinary-eyed delegation from the Vrake Intercordial, stared in horror from their transport chamber. Behind them, their diplomatic escort, a low-born Chiraxian student named Talun, pressed his gelatinous form against the polymer glass, his cilia trembling. She is terminating. Why does she show the teeth? Pain reflex, whispered Yarrick, the envoy's psychological liaison. Or perhaps a primitive social ritual, smiling, as a warning sign. No, came the rasping voice of the alien medic aboard the wreckage. Dr. Osiktal, a Terram-class xenobiologist assigned reluctantly to the human reacquisition effort. He was elbow-deep in a second human's abdominal cavity, his tendrils soaked in coagulated red. That's not warning, that's challenge. The dying woman, designation, Captain Mara Voss, Earthborn, was the last unaccounted-for survivor of the Clarity Drift incident. A salvage vessel turned rogue after breaching an interdicted zone near the Lorne Halo. Human stupidity, they said. Human curiosity. Human trespass into the unknowable. But what the Vrake delegation saw now was something else entirely. Mara Voss, bleeding out in the void, was not afraid. She was waiting. Osiktal's voice crackled across the shared comlink. Vitals are catastrophic. Pulmonary tear, multiple fractures, hypoxic brain trauma. She should be unconscious. She should be dead, muttered Talun, voice thinning. Then she moved. Her fingers, broken at unnatural angles, dragged across the cracked glass beside her hip, inch by inch. She reached for the jagged hull edge, pinning her down. The Vrek delegation recoiled as the sharp metal gouged into her shoulder, slicing deeper. And she pulled. A wet, stuttering scream escaped her lips, soundless in the vacuum, but it rang loud in the medic's internal audio. The shard tore deeper. Blood sprayed the inside of her helmet like crimson mist. But she kept pulling. She is attempting to free herself, said Osiktal, stunned. Let her die, said one Vrek diplomat coldly. She violated the Halo perimeter. This is just. She knows we're watching, Talun whispered. Mara's head lolled sideways. Her exposed eye met the delegation's again. Through the shattered viewport, the tinted visors, and layers of atmosphere shielding. There was no panic, no plea. There was only fury. Then her lips moved. No sound, no comlink, just the shape of words formed on raw, frostbitten lips. Keep watching. A tremor rocked the medbay. Alarm lights flashed on Osiktal's end. One of the other humans, another crew member, burned and unconscious, had just flatlined. The medic pivoted between them. Protocol dictated triage. He hesitated, and for the first time in his surgical career, Osiktal disobeyed. I need assistance, he barked. Preparing for field-level arterial reconnection. Someone get me a heat spool and microthread kit, now! You're going to operate there? In vacuum breach conditions? Asked the alien nurse. She pulled her own body off a star shard. If she wants to live that badly, she deserves to. The delegation backed away from the window, disturbed. Yarrick turned to the others. She should be sedated, contained. She should be studied, murmured Talun, shaking. No, said the eldest of the diplomats. She should be feared. Hours later, under flickering lights and the static-laced whir of failing systems, Mara opened her eyes again. The room was different now, sealed, warmer. Alien shadows moved behind translucent biobarriers. A thick liquid bag hung over her, its contents a yellowish compound, labeled in glyphs she couldn't read. She shifted. Pain exploded up her side, but she didn't cry out. She gritted her teeth, inhaled shallowly, and looked down. Sutures, primitive ones. Not synthetic web foam, not medjool. Needle and thread. Field sewn. Old school, she muttered. You're awake, came a voice beside her. Osiktal loomed in the low light, his tendrils retracted. Most species do not regain consciousness after what you endured. Most species, she said, aren't from Earth. He watched her. Why didn't you let yourself die? Mara turned to him. Her voice was raw, cracked, but steady. Because I hadn't won yet. Osiktal's breath sacs trembled. He didn't respond. From across the medbay, a muffled comlink flared to life. Static. Then a voice. Dr. Osiktal, priority transmission from the Reich Council. They want her transferred. Immediately. She's not a patient anymore. She's an anomaly. Osiktal looked down at her. They want to interrogate you. Dissect you. Let them try, she said. He hesitated again. Then he handed her a vial, dark green liquid with a skull symbol on its label. She blinked. What is it? She asked. He smiled faintly. To my people, it's a known neurotoxin. On Earth, I believe you call it monster energy. Mara laughed, ragged, painful. I need one more favor. Osiktal leaned closer. She gripped his arm. Get me a comlink. I need to warn them. The drift didn't breach the halo by accident. Something inside pulled us in. It's still coming. Before he could reply, alarms blared. The light snapped red. From outside the viewport, something unfurled against the stars. A shape that bent geometry, leaking matter light in pulsing waves. And somewhere inside Mara's broken body, a memory screamed. Not from this life, not from this timeline. A child's voice in a dead language. Bleed again, little spark. This time, don't get back up. The thing outside the viewport was not a ship. Not even in the loosest definition known to the sentient catalog of the galactic core. It had no thrusters, no hull, no measurable mass. Just angles. Angles that shouldn't exist. Angles that moved when you didn't look at them. Osiktal froze. His four hearts stuttered out of sync as the thing's outline shimmered against the void. It wasn't approaching. It was replacing. Every meter of real space around the wreck medical vessel began to fracture like glass under pressure. What is that? Mara's voice was hoarse. Her breath came in ragged puffs. She could barely lift her head, but her eyes locked on it, on the shape that seemed to scream without sound. It followed us. A technician's voice barked over the internal comms, panicked and wet with static. Space-time cohesion is failing around Sector 12. Shield harmonics are dropping. It's thinking at us. Mara clenched her teeth. Then stop listening. Do not engage it, Osiktal ordered. It is a level 0 incursion. We are not equipped to counter anything of that magnitude. But Mara's body was already moving, half unplugged from the IV line. She tore it out with a grimace, staggered onto one knee. The pain was blinding, but pain was a constant. Something to measure reality against. The observers had scattered. Yarrick and the diplomats were sealed behind emergency shielding, whispering about containment failure and plausible deniability. Tuluan hadn't moved. He stood in front of the viewport, transfixed. It's beautiful, he murmured. No, Mara rasped. It's a mirror. Inside the isolation chamber, shielding failed. The entity did not breach. It unfolded inside, peeling reality open from within like a book with infinite margins. Gravity tilted sideways. Fluids rose in droplets like reverse tears. A single hum echoed, low, sub-auditory, but felt inside the bones. Mara clutched the wall, vision swimming. Her right hand, shaking from blood loss, reached instinctively for her sidearm. Gone. Confiscated. Of course. But the thing didn't attack. It watched her. A sliver of its shifting surface reformed into something vaguely human. A silhouette of light and edge, standing where space should be. No face, no gender. Just the vague outline of a humanoid form, like a paper cutout folded from space-time. Mara's voice cracked. "Why did you pull us in?" The figure tilted its head, or refracted its geometry. The message came not as sound, but sensation, a pulse of meaning that struck behind the eyes. "We wanted to see if you'd stay dead." Mara's jaw tightened, her lips split further. "You broke our laws of physics for a science experiment?" "No, we broke yours. You wrote them in sand." Another pulse, stronger. Memory surged, unwelcome, cracked and stitched together. Flashes of earth, a dog barking in a thunderstorm, a child's laugh behind a half-closed door, the smell of antiseptic, shrapnel in her abdomen, her commanding officer's last words, choking on his own blood. "Don't give them the satisfaction." Then nothing. Then this. Back in the medical corridor, Osiktal yanked open an old Terran emergency crate he had confiscated for study. Inside were crude but effective tools: a pulse pistol, a bone saw, a packet of white powder labeled Quick Clot, Extreme. He took the pistol. "Where are you going?" Talun's voice was barely a whisper. He hadn't moved. "To retrieve her," Osiktal said, "or die trying." "You're a doctor," Talun protested. "You took the oath of biological neutrality." Osiktal's tendrils curled. "Then I'll save her on my way out." He pressed through the failing seals. Radiation alarms screamed, but the shielding was already compromised. Beyond the threshold, Mara and the entity stood face to face, if you could call its shape a face. She turned to him as he entered. "You should have stayed back," she said. "And let you bleed out again?" Osiktal replied, aiming the pulse pistol at the thing's center mass. "I've had enough of that." The entity shimmered. Another pulse. "We learned your form, your wounds, your limits. You die slowly, you hurt forever, and yet, you always return. Why?" Mara stepped forward. Her legs shook, but her spine stayed straight. Blood soaked her bandages. Her breath wheezed. She raised one trembling hand and flipped the thing off. "Because fuck you," she said. Silence. Then the room shook. Hard. Not from impact. From laughter. 1,000 echoes rebounding inside their skulls. Alien. Mocking. Joyful. "You amuse us. You may proceed." And just like that, it vanished. Folded out of space. No flash. No bang. Just a lingering aftertaste of static and geometry. The alarm stopped. The hum faded. Gravity righted itself. Osiktal stared at her. "What the hells was that?" "Something old," Mara muttered, falling to one knee. "Something that watches timelines like we watch ant colonies. We touched something we weren't supposed to, and now it's watching us back." 3 hours later, Mara sat at the edge of the med bay, re-stitched, wrapped in thermal foam, a nutrient bag taped crudely to her shoulder via jury-rigged catheter. Osiktal sat beside her, fingers twitching through decontamination routines. "They'll come for you soon," he said. "The council?" He nodded. "They think I made contact, that I've been infected." "Were you?" he asked. Mara stared ahead. She remembered the figure's voice, its pulses, its question. "Why do you always return?" "No," she said quietly. I've always been like this. She stood slowly, gripping the edge of the medbay table. I need to get off this ship. That will be difficult. They've locked down transport vectors. Mara looked at him, eyes sharp. Then I'll make them unlock them. Osiktal tilted his head. And go where? She turned toward the viewport, to the stars beyond, where angles no longer behaved. Back into the drift. You'll die. Maybe, she said, but I'll bleed louder this time. On the far side of the ship, Yarrick sat in silence, watching footage of the encounter on loop, frame by frame, rewinding every micro-expression, every twitch of Mara's body, every flicker of movement in the anomaly. He paused the footage on one exact frame. Mara, smiling, not at the anomaly, at the camera, at him. She had known. A tremble ran through his carapace, because he had seen that smile before. On Earth, 40 years ago, during a failed reconnaissance op that was supposed to have no survivors. One human girl, one explosion, one smile, one word etched in blood beside a burned-out bunker. Again. The cell wasn't a cell. It was a zoological observation chamber, at least according to the Council's definition. Clinical white walls, one-way mimetic glass, and a pervasive hum that never quite synced with human hearing. Mara sat still, elbows on her knees, eyes fixed on the mirrored wall. They're not going to interrogate me, she said. Across the glass, the observers logged telemetry in silence. She's not talking to us, one whispered. Yes, she is, Yarrick muttered. He leaned in, claws tapping against the steel lip of the console. That isn't defiance. It's targeted. She knows where the mic is buried. She's measuring us. He leaned back, mandibles flexing in agitation. This isn't a soldier. It's a problem set. And the variables are wrong. Behind him, Counselor Velis's projection flickered into full presence. Broad-shouldered, obsidian-skinned, draped in the gray-gold ceremonial veil of the first contact oversight. You didn't tell us she survived contact with Entity Zero, Velis said coldly. She wasn't supposed to, Yarrick replied. But you recognized her. I did. And failed to report it. I did. Velis tilted her head, unblinking. Why? Yarrick exhaled a dry rasp. Because I've made mistakes before. Watching her die was supposed to erase one. He paused, jaw twitching. But she didn't die. Inside the chamber, Mara stood slowly. Her legs were better, not great. Stitches pulled every time she moved. Her shoulder throbbed from makeshift IV insertion. She rubbed at the soreness absently, eyes never leaving the mirror. I know you're listening, she said. She took 2 steps forward, head tilted slightly, like a predator approaching a blind enclosure. Here's what I think. Silence. Whatever that thing was, it doesn't operate on causal timelines. It wanted something. It studied me. She reached the glass, her breath fogged against it. It didn't choose me. It recognized something already broken, something you tried to bury under biological containment protocols. You think I'm contaminated. She leaned in, close enough that her forehead nearly touched the glass. But you're wrong. A soft smile. I'm the control variable. Yarrick moved first. He strode through decontamination before the guards could form a consensus and keyed the chamber open himself. She didn't flinch when he entered. He didn't speak until the door hissed shut behind him. You remember me. Wouldn't be HFY without petty revenge arcs, she said dryly. He paused. You should have died on Earth, he said. Did, she said. More than once. He stepped closer. The report said the insurgents detonated a phase core bomb. They did. But you walked out. Mara blinked slowly. Define walk. Yarrick paced, agitated. You are not possible. Your biology should not permit this kind of trauma loop. The data from your tissue samples. Oh, you kept samples? She cut in. Cute. We buried your species, Yarrick snarled. We documented every scream, every radiation scar, every goddamn toxin you drink like it's a religious rite. Mara's smile widened. That's because you never understood what you were looking at. He hesitated. She took a step forward, voice calm. You think pain breaks us. You think trauma equals instability. But we weaponize that. You saw that video. I wasn't laughing for fun. I was laughing because it hurt. She tapped her chest. This doesn't run on stability. It runs on chaos and caffeine and the memory of a dead dog I named after a storm god. We survive because we refuse to make sense. Yarrick stared. Something behind his eyes cracked. Storm god? He asked, confused. Yeah, Thor. Big hammer. Wore a cape. Yarrick muttered. Terrans are unfit for the galactic theater. Which is why you keep losing to us, she shot back. Hours later, the council gathered. Behind triple-layered shielding, no humans allowed. Yarrick stood in the center, wings twitching. Velis floated above him, cold and impassive. She's not infected, Yarrick said. She's been like this since before contact. She survived an impossible encounter. She spoke back to it, he corrected. And it listened. The room stiffened. She must be dissected, one member hissed. No, Yarrick snapped. You'll get nothing from her corpse but rage echoes. You want data? You keep her alive. Velis narrowed her eyes. And what would you propose? Yarrick's mandibles tightened. She wants out. He looked up. Let her go. A day later, Mara stood before the docking gates. Her gear had been returned, partially. A new field kit, fresh armor with questionable tailoring. Osiktal approached, holding a sealed pack. You'll need this, he said. She opened it. Inside, a dog tag. Not hers. D. Lahar, 2125. Blood type, unknown. She looked up. Who was he? Another human. I failed him. Then you didn't fail me, she said softly. They stood in silence. Mara took the dog tag, slipped it into her wrist cuff. Osiktal hesitated. If you go back into the drift, you'll encounter others, beings worse than Entity Zero. Mara nodded. That's the idea. He raised an eyebrow. And if you meet it again? She turned, stepping onto the shuttle. I won't bleed this time, she said. I'll make it bleed. As the ship peeled into the drift, a fracture zone between stable star corridors, Mara sank into the pilot seat. The hull creaked. The stars outside bent in soft waves, like light underwater. And in the edge of the void, it waited. The angle. The impossible shape. But this time it didn't intrude. It hovered. Observing. Waiting. She whispered to it. You think you're the only thing watching? She opened the comms relay. A low-frequency pulse echoed outward, encoded with coordinates, frequencies, and one command. To all human survivors in uncharted zones, we're not done. We get back up. Somewhere, far away, a blinking light flickered on. And another. And another. Inside the council's deepest vault, an old file played on repeat. A battlefield. Burnt earth. A soldier crawling with half her ribs exposed, dragging another, dead or nearly, through mud and wire. A flare, a scream, then static. The report was marked, Humanity terminated. But someone had crossed it out. In red. Revised, pending confirmation. The drift howled. Not with sound, but with pressure, with shifting density, with memory that hadn't been hers. Mara gripped the controls as the shuttle tore through the gravity shear. The hull screamed as if remembering every war Earth had lost. and clawed back from. She leaned forward, sweat rolling down her temple, heart pacing like it still didn't believe in survival. Then, silence. No stars, no light, no time. Only them. 3 silhouettes floated ahead, undefined and wrong. Geometry bent around them. They didn't move. The universe moved to keep them central in frame. One shimmered like old metal soaked in oil. Another pulsed like bone cracked under glass. The third looked like nothing, like a missing frame in a reel of reality. She swallowed hard. "You're not real." They said nothing. She remembered the screams from Station Alethea. The radiation scars burned into her retinas. The way D. Lar's fingers twitched 3 minutes after brain death. Her voice came out steady. "You want a specimen. You want a model of how long a human can keep going before the soul gives out." The middle one tilted. She blinked. They were gone. In their place, Earth. Or something trying to be. Blue sky, green grass. The smell of spring, real and nauseating. Children's laughter in the distance. Her boots crunched through leaves that felt coated. "Not this time," she whispered. Her HUD flared red. Mindspace breach detected. They were pulling her in. Mara gritted her teeth and bit the inside of her cheek hard. Blood filled her mouth. Salt, copper, earthly. The illusion flickered, and the world glitched. Trees inverted, grass split like skin. The children's laughter pitched into screams and then rewound. "You think trauma is an access point," she muttered, spitting blood. "You think pain's a password." She grabbed her own wrist and snapped it. Pain detonated through her. But she didn't fall. The fake world cracked. Now she was kneeling on wet metal, back inside the shuttle. Her left hand dangled limp, swollen and discolored. HUD blinked again. Reality vector. Unlocked. Drift entity. Contact. Failed. Ship stabilizing. A low growl echoed behind her. She turned and froze. A creature stood where the console used to be. Feline. Canine. No. Wrong. Too many teeth. Too still. Covered in fur that shimmered between obsidian and wet ash. Its eyes glowed a dull, horrified orange. And Mara exhaled. "Oh, you followed me." The thing tilted its massive head. "I told you not to." Its tail swayed slowly, waiting, like a war waiting to happen. She didn't reach for a weapon. Instead, she knelt, cradling her wrist. "You're not just from Earth, are you?" It growled softly, something between longing and warning. "They must have picked you up during one of the raids. Labeled you, what? Apex predator? Biological hazard?" She smiled bitterly. "I called you dust, didn't I?" The thing didn't respond, but it didn't leave either. Mara stood again, staggered to the nav console. Her bones were shaking now, not from fear, but adrenaline crash. "Then we go together." She keyed in the coordinates. Not Earth, not even in council maps. This was a flare call, a gravity-warped pocket left by a failed human colony labeled only Outpost 7, Lost. As she activated the warp, the thing, Dust, sat beside her, patient, unmoving. When the stars returned, they were red. Outpost 7 was a grave. Orbiting a dying star, its structures floated in half-collapse. Atmospheric seals were ruptured. Scorch marks lined the hulls. There were no comm signals. But there was movement. Mara docked hard, yanked her gear, and stepped into airless silence. Dust followed, no suit needed. It breathed vacuum like hunger. Inside, lights flickered. Bodies floated in zero-G. Human, alien, hybrid tech. And then, shuffling. Not mindless. Wounded. Mara aimed her pistol. A voice, garbled through a cracked suit. "Don't shoot. We're human." Inside the medbay, 6 survivors were gathered around a makeshift core. Their eyes were sunken, their suits patched with duct tape, cloth, pieces of alien armor. One child wore a helmet made from a council drone's chest plate. The leader stepped forward, older woman, voice like sand over metal. "You're from Earth?" Mara hesitated. "What's left of it?" The woman stared. "Then you're the myth." Not the first time someone said that. "We picked up the flare," the woman whispered. "We thought it was a trap, but then, it had his code. LAR." Mara froze. "He was my CO. I carried his dog tag." The woman swallowed. "Then, it's real. The resistance is real." Mara looked around. "No, not resistance." She stepped forward, cracked her broken wrist back into place with a grunt. "This is reclamation." Later, the survivors told her what had happened. The council didn't wipe out humans. They scattered them, shattered time corridors, pulled survivors into fractured slices of space-time where clocks ran backward or sideways. Some humans didn't die. They got misfiled, lost in pockets of broken physics, forced to adapt, forced to evolve. And those who adapted, they stopped being human in ways that made the council scared to classify them. Dust growled at the mention of containment. Mara listened, and something inside her clicked. A rage not explosive, but glacial, inevitable. She stood on the deck of Outpost 7, looking down at the sleeping survivors. Children, veterans, ghosts. Behind her, dust waited. She opened the comms channel again. This time, she didn't whisper. "To all remaining human units in Sector 12, 18, and unchronological corridors, reclamation has begun. We are not extinct. We are the error that persists. We get back up." Somewhere in council space, alarms flared. A new signal, human frequency, unstable. The report reached Velis. She looked down, mouth tightened. It wasn't supposed to be possible. But the screen kept blinking. Outpost 7, active. Mara was alive. Again. Still. And she wasn't alone. Velis moved like a blade unsheathed. Council chamber walls pulsed with faint organic light, grown, not built. The air shimmered with antiseptic ozone, and behind her, the lesser minds chittered in confusion. "She breached drift space?" one asked. "Alone?" Another blinked with slow horror. "A human survived contact with the Null siblings?" Velis didn't answer. Her focus locked on the report's final pulse. Subject, 09 Mara. Signal confirmed. Reclamation protocol initiated. Reclamation. The word had no direct translation in council tongue, only approximations. Infection, anomaly, perpetuation through defiance. "She didn't breach," Velis said. Her voice was low, final. "She was shown." But why her? She bled out, and stood again. The chamber fell into silence. She turned to the center of the chamber, where a massive biomechanical construct began to uncoil. It was not a weapon. It was worse. An archive. A living record of species failures. Velis reached inside. On Outpost 7, Mara carved through old corridors with a plasma cutter, dust pacing behind her like a shadow made of teeth. The station's survivors had begun to move again, less like victims and more like a pack rediscovering its claws. The air still stank of old death, but now it also smelled like fuel. She found the old systems port and jacked in. Blue lines flickered. Lars' code, still running. She remembered his hands shaking as he keyed it into her suit. "It's not just a beacon. It's a map," he'd whispered. "The council didn't just scatter us. They catalogued us. They left breadcrumbs. Cruel ones. But if you follow them, you find the others." A grid unfolded across her HUD. Not star charts. Tear points. temporal bruises in space-time where humans had broken through, or bled out. Some were cold, some still flickered with life. She marked the closest. Tier Delta, unstable, time drift plus 11 hours. 2 hours later, Mara stood on the deck of a salvaged drop craft, her wrist braced, eyes hollow from lack of sleep. Dust lay curled near the reactor. Occasionally it growled at empty space. The human boy from the station, Karen, sat beside her, staring at her with a too-still expression. "Are we going home?" Mara didn't look at him. "There is no home. There's only what's left." Karen chewed the inside of his cheek. "The others say you were dead." "I was." "Then how are you here?" She blinked. "I think they wanted to know what we do when we die." He went silent. Then, "You're bleeding." She looked down. Her bandage was soaked through. "It's fine. But you're not fixing it." "I don't need to. I just need it to hurt enough that I remember I'm still alive." Karen didn't speak again. Dust stood up slowly and began pacing. Mara didn't breathe. "Prep for shift jump," she said. The boy moved. The creature stopped pacing, and Mara closed her eyes as the stars inverted and reopened in hell. Tier Delta was a mining colony reprocessed by war. She walked through silence punctured by frozen screams, bodies crystallized mid-motion, caught in a time fracture. A hummingbird flapped eternally in place over a spilled coffee mug that had not yet shattered. Shrapnel hovered mid-air like doubt suspended. The laws here were suggestions. "Split into 3, she told Karen and the others. "Sweep for active biosigns, but don't touch anything that's moving wrong." "What's wrong?" Karen asked. "Anything that doesn't know what year it is." She found her in a collapsed corridor under 6 meters of rock and half a council crawler. Alive. Barely. A woman in a blood-caked engineer's uniform, leg crushed, veins glowing with unstable drift exposure. Her lips moved in slow, erratic syllables. "Mama! No, not the water, it's burning, the sky!" Mara dropped to her knees and activated her medkit. The neural stabilizers wouldn't hold. Her pulse was oscillating between present and past. She didn't ask if the woman was military. She just whispered, "You're human," and then began cutting. By hand. She didn't wait for dust. Didn't wait for stabilization. She sawed through the metal with human arms and dragged the woman out by her ruined leg. When the neural bleed surged, she screamed and bit down on her own shoulder to keep from passing out. When they got her clear, the woman collapsed. Dust circled once and laid beside her, purring like a landslide. "She's going to die," Karen said from behind her. "Not if she's like us." "What if she's not?" "Then we hold her hand." Later that cycle, while the others slept, Mara stood on the edge of the shattered platform. Velis appeared in the sky. Not in person, not yet. But the signal took shape, her silhouette flickering in the distortion field like a queen inside a broken mirror. "You're not supposed to be here," the hologram said. "Neither are you." Velis tilted her head. "You've infected 3 corridors, reawakened 4 cold colonies. Do you know what that does to the structure?" Mara didn't blink. "I hope it hurts." Velis smiled, just faintly. "You're not here because of Earth. You're here because of grief." Mara's voice dropped. "You ever lose someone and keep hearing their voice at night? Keep looking for them in broken reflections? You ever realize their name lives in the cracks of your mind like a blade that never dulls?" Velis didn't answer. Mara stepped forward. "I'm not a virus. I'm a memory that fights back." Then she pulled her sidearm and shot the signal straight through the face. The hologram shattered into noise. Hours later, the woman she'd rescued woke up. She didn't remember her name, but she remembered how to gut a council soldier with a cracked helmet and a rusted blade. Mara sat beside her. You're one of us now. The woman stared. What are we? Mara reached down and cleaned the blood from her hand. We're the bleed that never stops. The sky over Tier Delta began to warp. Not with weather, with memory. Temporal bleed bled into reality, fractured starfields yawning open over scorched platforms, replaying moments the universe had already abandoned. Mara watched the horizon fracture with a slow, cosmic exhale, like God was sighing in regret. Karen screamed awake. The newly recovered woman, no name yet, just ghost in Mara's logs, vomited nothing but static and pain. Dust growled, low and primal. Something was coming, and Mara knew exactly what it was. Not council, not soldiers. Archivists. They didn't arrive to fight. They arrived to record what was left. And they had found her. In orbit, the ship they rode in pulsed with anti-light, an impossible geometry that bent perception the closer one looked. It wasn't built for transport. It was grown for annihilation by witnessing. Archivists didn't kill with guns. They killed with observation. Cataloged your name, your fracture, your final breath, and sealed it inside living data vaults that hummed for centuries with your pain. Entire human enclaves had disappeared without a trace, without a war, only a distant echo. They were seen. Mara whispered to Dust, "They're here to unmake us." Dust stood on all fours. Something in its posture turned unnatural. Its body seemed to fold in on itself, teeth retracting, eyes blooming with strange yellow hunger. The wolf wasn't a wolf anymore. It was something older, something more honest. Good, Mara said. Then let them see. She rallied the survivors, 10 now, counting Ghost. Only 6 had combat training. One had never held a weapon. Another refused to kill, even after her brother died. Mara stood before them all and bled as she spoke. They'll come and stare, and when they stare, you'll want to kneel. Don't. You look back. You fight not to win, but so they never forget who bled first. She tossed Karen a breather mask. Ghost had already armed herself with a serrated arc blade, and then the sky peeled open. The archivists didn't descend like soldiers. They phased in. 10 of them. Humanoid only in silhouette. Their skin refracted stars. Their heads glowed with open data ports leaking radiant dread. Each movement left behind after images, ghosts of moments they hadn't yet lived. One looked directly at Mara. She felt her mind tug, like someone reached into her skull and turned a page. Her father's face flashed behind her eyes. A scream she'd buried during the great shatter rang in her ear. A hand, Lars, torn from her grip at the relay breach. No, she growled, biting her tongue until blood flooded her mouth. You don't get to write me. She lifted her rifle, fired. The bullet hit nothing. The archivist's head shimmered, not dodging, just choosing not to be there anymore. Then it spoke. Subject, Mara. Its voice came from every direction, inside the walls, inside her blood. Status, unyielded. Another step. Designation, bleed point. And then all 10 archivists looked at her. As one, she screamed, and Dust leapt. The wolf struck the lead archivist in the chest. Time fractured. Ghosts of dust exploded outward. Dozens of overlapping forms, fangs and fur caught mid-snarl, attacking simultaneously from every timeline Dust had ever existed in. Past, future, alternate. The archivist collapsed. Not destroyed. Overwritten. Mara moved in the chaos. Firing, screaming, laughter cracking her face like glass. We're the fucking story now! But they were still dying. One by one. A medic vaporized mid-sentence, her death echoing backwards, her shadow vanishing seconds before her body. A boy was unmade by a gaze. Ghost fought like her mind had come unhinged from cause and effect, slicing archivists as they materialized, grinning through the blood like it was rain. Even Karen killed. Even Karen watched one archivist burn in human fire and whispered, "Remember us, you abyssal bastard." And still, the sky darkened. Mara hit the emergency breach in the colony's old core. It hissed open. Behind it, a single chamber, unmapped, untouched. Inside, a relic from the Earth Resistance Wars. Not a bomb, not a beacon, a mirror. Polished obsidian framed in rusted titanium, still humming, etched with the warning, "Do not show it what you are." Mara turned to the others. "It's a reflection drive." Karen blinked. "What does that mean?" "It reflects what the universe is too afraid to become." She dragged the mirror into open space, angling it toward the archivists. They hesitated. They had seen one before, and they had lost. Mara activated the surface. A hum built, deep enough to rupture teeth. And then, light. But not light from any sun. It showed the archivists what they would look like if they were human, if they knew guilt, grief, pain. The archivists screamed. Reality buckled. 3 of them collapsed inward, imploding like lies exposed. One locked eyes with Mara in its final moment. "How do you live like this?" She leaned in, whispering through a cracked helmet. "We don't. We endure." Then she shattered the mirror against her chest plate. The impact sent out a blast that knocked every timeline out of sync. Silence followed. And smoke. Later, Karen knelt beside a wounded Dust. The creature licked his hand once, then fell unconscious. "He'll live," Ghost muttered. "Probably." Probably? It's hard to tell with something that's eaten time. Mara looked to the stars. The archivists were gone. For now. But they knew her name, and the multiverse was listening. She sat down, pressing her back to cold metal, bleeding, laughing. "Tell them," she whispered to Karen, "that we got back up." The sky above Tier Delta was wrong. Not broken, not burning, just watching. Nothing hovered where the archivists had stood, but the air was dense with presence, the kind you didn't feel on your skin, but in the soft tissue behind your eyes. Like you were being catalogued by a god who hadn't yet decided whether you were art or garbage. Mara sat with her legs folded under her, helmet cracked, ribs likely broken, hair matted with soot and dried blood. She didn't move. Not yet. The mirror was gone. Glass scattered across the fractured courtyard like dead stars. Its shatter had carved a wound through timelines. Time around them staggered like a drunk. Ghost hadn't spoken in over an hour. She was cleaning her blade with methodical precision, her eyes darting every time a wind gust passed, as if sound and threat had become indistinguishable. Dust hadn't moved at all. He was still breathing, barely, but he didn't respond to Karen's voice, nor the desperate scent of burnt ozone that clung to him. Something had gone dark in the beast. "It's not a coma," Karen said. I think he's trapped somewhere else." "Where?" Mara croaked. Ghost looked up. "Wherever he was when he became what he is." There was no time for healing, no time for mourning, because the sky shifted again. But this time, it didn't open. It collapsed, like a throat closing in on itself. A singularity of light formed in the air, spiraling violently. But it didn't pull matter in. It pushed thought out. Mara stood just in time to see something fall from it. A human. Or something that used to be. He hit the ground without sound, absorbing the impact as though the laws of inertia had opted out. He wore no armor, no insignia, just a plain, sleeveless jumpsuit clinging to skin too pale to be native to any surface-dwelling species. But Mara didn't need badges or banners to recognize him. She remembered him, except she didn't. Her eyes knew him, but her brain refused. Karen gasped. That's… No, Mara snapped. It can't be. But it was. Lar, her brother, the one she watched die inside a collapsing relay core 2 years ago. The one who screamed at her to run while the fire swallowed the world. He looked exactly the same. Same crooked scar down his lip from the time he stole a council stim to save a wounded wolf. Same calloused fingers, same haunted eyes. Only now, those eyes had no heat. Lar? Karen whispered. He tilted his head at her, then looked at Mara. Designation confirmed, he said. Subject, Mara Taylor. His voice had no weight, no warmth, just calibration. Ghost stood suddenly, hand on her blade. Mara didn't stop her, because this wasn't her brother. This was a reconstruction, a reprint, a thing built from memory and loss. Who made you? Mara asked. The answer came not in words but in sound, low harmonic pulses that made her nose bleed. He wasn't from the archivists. He was from after. We saw what you did, he said, what you reflected. He stepped forward, every motion flawless, every motion programmed. You offered them a glimpse of pain. That was not rebellion. That was an invitation. Invitation to what? Ghost snapped. Lar's duplicate stared at her, unblinking. To evolve. Mara understood then. The archivists weren't destroyed. They were changed. And when you change something old enough, something cosmic enough, it mutated beyond recognition. What stood before them was the result. Not an enemy, not a machine, a question. Why are you here? She demanded. Lar blinked. To warn you. He lifted his hand and the sky behind him unrolled like skin from bone. Space peeled back, revealing not stars, but selves. Dozens, hundreds, every possible version of Mara. One with her eyes burned out, holding a scorched dog tag. One with silver hair, mouth sewn shut. One laughing manically over a pile of archivist corpses. Another cradling Dust's dead body under a red moon. Endless Maras, caught in recursion. You are not singular, the copy said. You are not fixed. You are not ready. Karen fell to his knees, covering his ears. Make it stop! Make it stop! Ghost stared, wide-eyed, blade forgotten. Mara forced herself forward. I'm not any of them, she spat. I'm me. Lar's shade stepped close, so close she smelled burnt ozone in his breath. Not yet. Then he touched her forehead, and everything collapsed. She stood in her own body, but somewhere else. The walls were familiar, sterile, military. The old Earth resistance base? No, her old outpost, but undamaged, alive. Voices filtered in from beyond. Laughter, distant shouting, a song she'd forgotten from when she was 6, playing through a broken radio. Then, her own voice, younger, unscarred. Lar, don't go yet. We haven't even hit the lake. You'll be fine, Mara. You always are. He kissed her forehead and vanished. A scream ripped her back into her body. Her own. On the ground, covered in sweat. The Lar thing gone. The sky resealed. Karen curled into himself, muttering coordinates that didn't exist. Ghost knelt beside her, face pale. Was it real? Mara asked. No, Ghost said, but it happened. Dust twitched. Once, then lifted his head. His eyes were different. Golden still, but deeper. He looked at Mara and spoke. They're coming. A pause. Not for you. For the mirror inside you now. Mara sat up, felt her chest where the shattered glass had embedded. A strange warmth pulsed beneath the ribs. The reflection had entered her. A piece of the device, or the concept itself. and now the universe wanted it back. She looked up at the stars. No longer stars. Signals, scripts, portals. They would come in waves now. Not to kill, to reclaim. And she'd have to become something else to stop them. Something worse than what they feared. Something human. The convoy moved through the ash wastes of Relacour like ghosts dragging their own graves behind them. Mara didn't speak. Not for the first hour. Not for the second. Not even as Karen lost another layer of himself, eyes flickering like a failing neural net. Dust walked beside her, silent, heavy, and real now in a way he'd never been before. His gait was looser, his wounds sealed in strange concentric spirals across his fur, evidence of something that had rebuilt him cell by cell, but not kindly. Ghost stayed back, watching all of them like she was preparing to bury each one. The terrain stank of ion burn and dead civilizations. Alien ruins jutted from black sand like broken ribs. Wind carved lines in the powder that whispered in dead dialects no one dared translate. No birds, no sun, just them, just forward. And under Mara's skin, the pulse. It beat not like a heart, but like a warning. The mirror, what was left of it, hadn't just embedded itself in her. It had nested, and it was waking up. "You know it's changing you," Ghost said, not looking at her. They stood on the rim of a collapsed crater the size of a city. Inside, bones. Not just alien, human, but not from this war. "Changing me how?" "Your eyes," Ghost said. "They flicker when you sleep now, like they're syncing with something that's not here." Mara didn't deny it. Couldn't. Every night since the shattering, she'd felt the shift. Dreams within dreams, rooms with no walls, conversations that didn't use words, versions of herself flickering like bad signal. A soldier, a traitor, a mother, a weapon. Some of them had killed Ghost. One had kissed her. One had eaten her own tongue to keep from speaking the wrong thought aloud. And the worst one? The worst Mara was the one who did nothing. Who let the universe burn because she didn't believe she could stop it. At night, the sky bled. They made camp under a broken observatory spire. Karen was muttering again, this time in harmony with the wind. Ghost rigged up perimeter alarms, but her hands shook. Just slightly. Just enough for Mara to notice. And Dust. Dust didn't sleep anymore. Instead, he listened. Not to them. To the frequencies between worlds. "Something is pulling time toward you," he said finally. "You don't mean metaphorically." "No." Mara stared into the embers of their fire. It wasn't wood burning. It was some alien husk, smelled like sweet rot and metal. "Is it the mirror?" Dust tilted his head. "It's not a mirror anymore." The next day, they reached the vault. They weren't the first. Bodies lined the entrance, twisted and drained. Not blood, not energy. Intention. Their purposes had been scooped out, leaving meat that didn't know why it existed. Karen whimpered. "They tried to speak. Look." He pointed to one corpse. The fingers were broken but arranged. Not random. A gesture. Mara recognized it. She'd seen it in old Earth resistance videos. It meant, "I died free." But here? The meaning had shifted. Ghost crouched near the corpse. They weren't warning us. They were praying. Inside the vault, silence. No echo, no decay. Just cold, polished corridors in perfect stasis. Machines lined the walls, organic tech, humming with breath rather than electricity. Karen froze in the threshold. "I can't go in." "Why?" Mara asked. "Because I already did." Ghost grabbed his shoulder, about to press him, until she saw his eyes. They weren't his anymore. They were bleeding light. Mara moved in first. The vault's interior was disorienting. Walls curved wrong, corners that turned inward rather than out, staircases that moved when you weren't looking. She gritted her teeth and kept moving. The mirror's pulse guided her now, not like a compass, but a heartbeat, until the corridor ended. At a door that wasn't a door, just a membrane, pulsing faintly. Behind it, a chamber, a shrine, and her. Another Mara, bound in a web of silver filaments, eyes wide open, mouth sewn shut, alive. "What is this?" Ghost asked behind her. Mara stepped closer. The other version didn't move, but her breath shook. She was terrified. Of Mara. A flicker of movement. Dust leaned forward. "She remembers you," he whispered. "Not from before, from after." "I've never been here before." "But you will be." The chamber began to shift. No alarms, no warning, just reality folding in on itself. And from the walls, the archivists returned. But not as bodies, as projections of what they had once been. Tall, wrong, voiceless. They spoke directly into Mara's spine. "You fractured us, and through your fracture we found options." Mara stepped between them and the bound version of herself. "She's me. Let her go." The archivists pulsed. "She is the you that chose silence, and you are the you that screams." Ghost pulled her blade. Dust growled. But they weren't being threatened. They were being weighed. The archivists didn't come to kill. They came to trade. "We offer you resolution," they said. "We take the mirror. We erase all potential versions. You remain, singular, mortal, safe." "And if I refuse?" A pause. "She breaks free." They pointed to the bound Mara. "She is the last one, the one who remembers how this ends." Karen stumbled into the room, eyes glowing, voice flat. "They warned me, Mara, in the mirror world, that if you keep going, none of us make it back." The silence broke, not with sound, but music. A broken lullaby, hummed through ruined teeth. The other Mara was humming, despite her sewn mouth, despite the pain, despite the fear. Mara stepped forward. "I want to hear what she has to say." "No," the archivist said. "You don't get to." Mara pulled her knife. "I wasn't asking." The blade sliced through the silver web. The filaments screamed. So did the chamber. Ghost fell to her knees. Karen convulsed. Dust howled. And the world split. Mara stood in a place made entirely of memory. Everyone she had ever failed was there, bleeding, laughing, begging her to let go. And at the center, the other Mara. No bindings, no threads, just her, crying. "You kept going," she said, "even when you shouldn't have." Mara stepped close. "What happens if I do?" "Everything dies." "And if I don't?" "You do." Mara nodded once, then touched her other self's hand, and pulled her into herself. Not fusion, not annihilation, just acceptance. And the mirror inside her became whole. Outside, the vault collapsed. The archivists wailed as logic turned against them. Ghosts screamed Mara's name. And Mara stepped from the rubble, eyes glowing, not with light, with every version of herself that refused to die quietly. "Where do we go now?" Dust asked. Mara smiled, teeth bloodied. "We make them understand." "Understand what?" Ghost whispered. "That even if we bleed," Mara said, voice full of ash and fury, "we get back up." The universe cracked at the seams, not all at once, but the moment Mara walked out of the vault, hair matted with mirror ash, pupils glowing with refracted timelines, breath carrying the weight of all her possible deaths, the laws of probability began to shudder. It started with the wind, blowing in two directions at once. Then the sky, bleeding shades not in the known spectrum, then the echoes, voices that hadn't been spoken yet. Ghost heard her own scream 2 minutes before it left her throat. Dust snarled at shadows that hadn't appeared. And Karen was gone. Not dead, just skipped, like a word deleted mid-thought. Mara stood where he'd been, hand outstretched, palm trembling. He tried to pull the future into the now, she murmured. Didn't know it would cost him. Ghost stared at her. You knew that was going to happen. No, Mara said. I remembered it. They fled east, though no compass agreed on what direction that was anymore. The terrain twisted itself in fractal pulses, hills reforming mid-step, rocks evaporating as if they were ashamed to be observed. Mara moved with purpose. She no longer navigated with eyes. She navigated with certainty. Where are we going? Dust finally asked. Forward, Mara said. That's not a direction. It is now. The planet had begun to hemorrhage multiversal bleed. They saw another convoy marching parallel to them. But wrong. Not wrong as in enemy. Wrong as in them. Same gear, same faces. One Mara limped. One ghost had no scar. One Dust walked on 2 legs, wearing a soldier's coat. As they passed, their eyes locked. Each version said the same thing without speaking. Don't trust your next choice. Then they were gone, vanished like mist shaken from the back of the mind. At night, the stars wept. Actual droplets, burning blue tears that sizzled as they landed in the dirt. Ghost caught one in her palm and it spoke, not in words, in reminders, her father's last breath, the smell of cordite when her battalion fell, the exact inflection of Mara's voice when she first said run. Ghost dropped the star. It sank into the soil like a wound. We're not supposed to be here anymore, she said. Mara's voice was soft. Then let's make it count. At the edge of reality's unraveling, the spire. It rose in impossible geometry, towering up and in, folding in recursive fractals that defied all mapping logic. Once, it had been the archivist's nexus point, a vault not of knowledge, but of limits. Now, it pulsed with the potential of every decision unmade. We destroy it, Mara said. Dust sniffed the air. We destroy a nexus of choice? What happens to the rest of us? Ghost was already setting charges. We don't get to live if they get to erase us. A pause. Then Mara. We don't destroy it. Ghost turned. What? We hijack it. Inside the spire was not space. It was memory given structure. Every stair was a moment. Every wall an unresolved trauma. The elevator was a heartbeat of a forgotten version of Dust, screaming to be let back in. They climbed anyway, and every floor made Mara less solid. Stop, Ghost said. You're flickering. I know. You're not Mara anymore. I know that too. At floor 19, they met the first human. Not metaphorically, the actual one. Or maybe just the archivist's version of them. A burning silhouette encased in glass, whispering truths too heavy for gravity to bear. You never understood, it rasped as they passed. Humanity doesn't evolve, it remembers. Mara touched the glass. And you never understood that memory isn't passive. The glass cracked. The silhouette screamed in relief. Top of the spire, a control chamber shaped like a Mobius strip. In its center, the seed. A swirling construct of all untaken paths. If lit, it could collapse the multiverse into a single stable timeline. The archivist's last resort. Mara stepped toward it. Dust growled. You touch that, and you collapse choice itself. I won't collapse it, she said. I'll ignite it. Ghost reached for her weapon. Are you going to stop me? Mara asked. I might, Ghost said. Her hand trembled. Then she lowered the gun. You never really asked for any of this. No, Mara said. But neither did Earth. She pressed her hand to the seed. Everything turned white, then black, then choice. She was 9, on a field trip, watching wolves behind glass. She was 17, soaked in blood, telling a medic, "It's not mine." She was 28, holding Ghost's broken body in a crater, screaming a name she couldn't remember anymore. She was 63, tired, toothless, and full of poems she never wrote down. She was none of these. She was all of them. The seed screamed, and through her, humanity answered. In orbit above the spire, the last archivist fleet blinked into being. Too late. Because the sky was on fire. Dozens, no, hundreds of human ships burst from fractured wormholes. None were clean. All were held together with rage, duct tape, and last goodbyes. And leading them, Karen, his face glowing. But not alive. Not quite dead either. Just activated. He broadcast one message to the fleet. She's doing it. Don't let it be in vain. Ghost activated her beacon. Dust unleashed a howl into the control node, and the seed bloomed. Multiversal branches exploded out from the spire like roots punching through stone. Each one contained a version of humanity too stubborn to be deleted, too irrational to be modeled, too alive to be tolerated. The archivists tried to shut it down. They screamed. They bent time. They collapsed logic. But you can't predict a species that drinks poison for fun and calls it an energy boost. Mara burned. Not in pain, in clarity. Every version of her now danced in sync. She saw the version who died in Chapter 3. She saw the one who betrayed them in Chapter 6. She saw the one who never left Earth, who raised cats, who told stories. They all looked back at her and said, "You made it," then vanished. When the seed stabilized, reality reset, not to peace, not to clarity, but to possibility. Mara collapsed. Ghost caught her. Dust howled. The sky flickered one last time and turned human blue. They watched the human bleed out, then get back up. And now she was becoming something else. The sky had never made that sound before. Not thunder, not sonic boom, not anything. It was grief. The sky grieved. The clouds rippled with violet pulses as the spire disassembled itself into light. Not destroyed, released. Mara lay cradled in the crook of fractured stone and rewired gravity, her chest barely rising. Ghost knelt beside her, silent. Blood slicked her gloves. Dust stood motionless, tail low, eyes flicking between realities that hadn't settled on which version of him survived. Above them, the seed pulsed, no longer unstable, no longer volatile. It had chosen a human nerve system to stabilize its paradox lattice, and it wanted more. Across the planet, across the fractured now, they came. Humans. From timelines that shouldn't have existed. Wounded, tired, smiling, screaming. A poet with a shattered jaw. A mother holding a child made of glass. A cyborg covered in graffiti and memory tattoos. A man carrying a cat the size of a war beast. Soldiers, civilians, refugees, monsters, saints. Every one of them scarred by survival. Every one of them refusing to stay dead. The archivist fleet blinked overhead like dying stars. They tried once, just once, to cleanse the anomaly. It backfired. The spire now controlled probability, and humans had weaponized improbability. The fleet turned in on itself, logic eating tail, guns firing backwards, time stuttering mid-barrage. One warship broadcast a scream before it collapsed into a childhood memory of its captain's first lie. Another jettisoned its AI core, which translated the last command as, "We were wrong." Ghost stood, helmet off, blood on her cheek like war paint. "Is she alive?" Dust asked. Ghost looked down. Mara's pulse was weak, her eyes open, but distant. She's not here anymore, Ghost whispered. She's in all of them. She gestured to the gathering flood of impossible survivors. She is the multiverse now. From the edge of the horizon came the hounds. Not metaphor. Earthborn creatures pulled from fractured reality. Dogs, wolves, canines that made the archivist's terror databanks scream in silent binary. Hundreds of them, foaming, growling, some scarred from battlefield trauma, some limping, many with glowing collars made from repurposed alien tech. At their center walked a boy no older than 12, holding a bone-handled leash connected to something unseen. The dogs parted for him. He approached Mara's still body and knelt. From his pocket, he removed a flask. The liquid shimmered with caffeine, sugar, painkillers, and something unquantifiable. Hope in liquid form. Ghost blinked. Where did you get that? Trade secret, he said, then uncapped it and poured it into Mara's mouth. She convulsed, screamed, and then sat up. Her eyes burned gold. Her hands crackled with quantum residue, but her voice was hers. Where's Karen? Gone, Dust said softly. He bought us the sky. Mara nodded once, then again, then didn't stop. She was nodding to something behind them. They turned and saw Karen, half ghost, half armor, stumbling forward. Did I miss it? Mara's voice broke. You never left. He dropped beside her, laughing. Told you, I always come back. They hugged like two dying timelines holding on for one more heartbeat. From orbit, the last archivist attempted speech. It broadcast this. You are incompatible. You are corrupted. You are contaminated by paradox. Dust looked up and bared his teeth. Damn right we are. The seed rose into the sky, pulsing with human intention. Ghost activated the uplink. This is for the species who bleed out and stand back up. She hit transmit. Every multiversal copy of Earth got the message. A call, a war hymn, a homecoming. We see them. Teachers with Molotovs. Nurses repurposing alien surgery drones using duct tape and profanity. Farmers guiding drones with flocks of Earth crows. Children teaching archivist machines how to draw. Across dimensions, humans rebuilt, not for dominance, but to exist. Their very being said, you can delete us, but you can't forget us. We remember each other into permanence. Mara's body flickered. Too much energy. She looked to Ghost. You know what comes next. Ghost nodded. You're the lighthouse now. Mara's tears floated upward, becoming stars. I love you both, she whispered. Then turned and walked into the seed. Her form unraveled, became data, became story. Some say she became a god. Others say she fragmented herself into every timeline where humanity needed one more chance, one more voice, one more scream in the void. A rumor spread through the fractured multiverse. Sometimes when a human is about to give up, they hear her whisper, bleed, then get back up. Ghost, Dust, and Karen, what was left of him, stood at the rim of the now empty spire. The world around them rebuilt in slow pulses. Karen looked up. What now? Ghost exhaled. We keep going. Dust stretched, tail slicing through light. Where? Ghost smiled, bleeding at the corners of her lips. Wherever they don't want us. Final shot. A new Earth. A mosaic of every version. Dogs lounging on AI-run tanks. Archivist ruins covered in graffiti that simply reads, Still here. The sky overhead, shifting, chaotic, alive. And one last voice, soft, echoing through every impossible tomorrow. We were never the apex predators. We were the mistake the universe couldn't unmake. End.